Hello everyone, my name is Carrillo, and in this video I will be discussing and giving my own personal opinion on a very controversial issue, that is jail and prison overcrowding. This is an issue because these prisons and jails are so overcrowded that they have to figure out what they're going to do with these prisoners and, well, basically offenders, inmates. So they have to figure out what they're going to do with them, and many times they're releasing them earlier than their original sentence because the prison is so overcrowded, and this is an issue for people outside in society. I will also be interviewing a good friend of mine, Ricardo Naranjo. As we all know, prison and jails are a place for criminals and criminals only. These criminals at one point violated the law. Perhaps they violated multiple times, and that is why they're there. So a quick brief history on prisons is that the prisons in America were first originally built for the purpose of rehabilitation and as an alternative to the corporal punishment of the earlier times. In America, we have something called the Justice Module, which is a contemporary model of imprisonment based on the principle of just deserts. This emphasizes individual responsibility and the punishment of offenders. In other words, imprisonment is seen as a fully deserved consequence of criminal behavior. So when the decision of who and when an inmate is supposed to be released because of overcrowding comes into play, I believe, my opinion is the seriousness of the crime they committed and the time that they have already served. And if it's the seriousness is not that major, then you lower that to the time that they have already served, and if it's enough, then they can be released. And I'm going to say a quote by Cleo Field, a former U.S. representative from Louisiana. And he says that we spent $60,000 building a prison cell, another $35,000 a year to keep that inmate. At the same time, we spend less than $4,000 on each school student. So let's put the money in education, because that's the only answer to crime. So Ricardo,
how you doing, Aaron?
Thank you for coming out.
No problem.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you a couple questions.
Okay.
The first one is, what do you think about inmates being released early before their original sentence and into society because of overcrowding of these prisons?
I think it all depends on the crime and just the time they've served as well. If somebody served 20 years, 30 years already in there, and maybe they got 5 years left, 6 years left, then I think it's fair, maybe you just release them early. Whereas somebody maybe has served 10 years, and just because they've been on good behavior, it doesn't mean you're going to release them 30, 40 years early from their sentence. So it all depends, I think, on the crime and just the time they've served.
So what do you think about $4,000 being spent on each student rather than $35,000 being spent on prisoners?
I think that's just a big problem right there. Education is always the key to success, at least to me. I go to school, and I think without education, there's only so much you can do outside in the real world. And, taking away education away from kids, I think is, or at least not giving them as much as they deserve, whereas you're giving somebody that's committing felonies, crimes, murders, that probably doesn't care about their lives because they're in prison, obviously, for a reason. They don't care what they do, they don't care how they live or anything. I'd rather release an inmate early that didn't commit a big crime and give it to a kid at school, to be successful in life and get the education that they desire.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. No problem.